Today's session is how to deploy a one-to-one iPad program in education. My name's Dave Saltmarsh, and I'm joined today by Nick Thompson. Before Nick dives too much into the steps on deploying an iPad one-to-one, we'd like to cover just a little bit of background. Apple has been involved in education since their beginning. We've seen their solution evolve over the years to meet the changing needs, and the introduction of iPad has expanded their impact even greater. Its influence on transforming learning spans all ages, grade levels, and content areas. Today, iPad is the tablet of choice in schools, and it's being adopted and accepted by teachers that are considered well beyond those of the early adopters. We're seeing it embraced by a lot of teachers who perhaps in the past have tried different technologies, but now they're really seeing how much it can influence the learning and the great ease of use it has. Apple clearly remains focused on education, with over 5 million Macs and iPads shipped globally into education each year since 2011. The breadth of iOS apps available specifically for education establishes a powerful and potentially limitless ecosystem for learning. This breadth of apps plus iBooks is remarkable and expanding constantly. Add to this the amazing affordances of iPad, which take learning beyond the basic substitution of activities to experience that we could never have done before. Simulations that take us places, ideas that on paper just couldn't materialize or students couldn't visualize. It's going so much beyond the basic substitution that used to be done. It really is becoming transformational. And it's allowing us to support this engagement. Now, iTunes has come out, and it was first embraced by higher ed, and now it's fully taken on by the K-12 community. The digital classroom has really evolved a lot of thanks to the iPad because of this ease of management. Whether you're using Casper Suite or you're using another device management, we're seeing the rollout that we're really going to get into later today become streamlined, where we're returning things back into the classroom so we can truly create this digital environment and transform learning. Because education started with a focus on learning, and while it's important to do exams, we really want to ensure that we're making exam day like any other day, and that learning comes first. iPads heighten the potential for students to explore, analyze, experiment, and discover so far beyond that basic communication and collaboration to a more creative level that promotes critical thinking. And this student-centered approach allows teachers to move from that lecturer or facilitator or even a coach to more of an activator, modifying things on the fly for students as needed. Because each student's path to learning is nonlinear and it's uncharted. Adding to the mantra that we've heard for many years of anytime, anywhere is now this focus on any pace and recognizing that one size doesn't fit all. And it's no longer appropriate to have all students necessarily on the same page or even in the same book or activity. And learning is to be built on a concept of personalization and even mass customization. Now, there are a variety of iPad use cases that support this. We're seeing certainly one-to-one environments where each student has their own device. Some programs allowing students to take them home, some where they keep them in school, or it changes based on the need. And as students earn privileges, perhaps on a digital citizenship path. Shared use models, where a lot of schools started with their pilot, or keeping to that program, where they either have a cart or trolley, move from room to room, or perhaps they have a class set dedicated into a room of a half a dozen iPads. We're also seeing students bringing their own device in, sometimes as a supplement to a program. Perhaps they have a different iPad that is being approved to be used in a current one-to-one. Or it's a plan to get more devices in to allow students to bring their own devices in. At the same time, we're seeing this hybrid model in a school or certainly across a district where one grade level may have one use case and another is promoting a one-to-one, whereas perhaps in some elementary grades we're seeing the shared use. Either way, we're seeing this influx of iPads growing towards a one-to-one. And so we're really here today to focus on that. And for those supporting the one-to-one, we've seen a variety of reasons, but really what jumps out at first is this focus on learning. Common among most of them is a high importance being placed on equity. It's why most of us that have been involved in education got into it to begin with. We wanted to make a difference. We want to provide all students rich and engaging experiences. And to be able to do this personalization, it gives, at the same time, great potential for opportunities. We want to make sure that those potentials are available for all students, and it's not limited necessarily by the technology they themselves can get their hands on. And for this transformation to happen, it requires an ecosystem based on a huge potential for learning that isn't limited. Again, that ecosystem that allows greater use beyond the substitution, looking at growth of a program, because who knows what's going to be around the corner and is available to students. We want to move along that continuum and prepare for the future and embrace those kind of things that are going. So what we're going to go ahead and do right now is get into this one-to-one implementation. And so, Nick, I'm going to let you take it over and go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you again to everyone out there tuning in. We will now kind of go into the steps needed for a true one-to-one deployment with using our product called the Casper Suite. So before we go into all these steps, we need to understand what is the Casper Suite. We here are JAMF Software, and our product is called the Casper Suite, which is designed to manage everything Apple. At the heart of this suite of applications is something called the JSS, or the JAMF Software Server. That's the management server component. It includes a suite of applications that run natively on Mac OS X, and these apps are used for building packages for deployment, remote access to client machines, imaging, as well as enrollment. It also includes a set of applications for the end user, such as Casper Focus and Self-Service. All these together make up the Casper Suite. The JSS, or again JAMF Software Server, acts as a web server, which communicates to your iPads via Apple's Mobile Device Management, or MDM, protocol. The JSS can run on any OS X, Windows, or Linux server for an on-premise deployment. We also offer a service where we can host the JSS for you in our cloud. So let's take a look at this. We've broken this down to 5 logical steps: prepare, configure, apps and books, deploy, and manage. Let's start with prepare. Our first step in this stage is to sign up for Apple's deployment programs. These programs have been developed by Apple over the years and have greatly improved organizations' ability to deploy iPads. You can sign up for all 3 programs on Apple's website. Let's review them quickly. First is Device Enrollment Program, or DEP. And this allows for zero-touch enrollment of Macs and iOS devices. Next, we have VPP, or Volume Purchase Program, which allows you to buy apps and books in bulk via their web portal. And finally, there's the Apple ID for Students program, which allows you to facilitate the creation of Apple IDs for students under 13. These can be all found on their website, deploy.apple.com. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Here we are at their website. And before signing up for their programs, you're going to want to make sure that you have your Apple customer number from your Apple rep or your authorized reseller. You're also going to need your organization's Dun and Bradstreet number. These are both required for the sign-up process. You'll also create a program-level Apple ID that you'll log into this page. So it's a best practice to use a shared email address, something like appleid@school.org, when creating this program-level Apple ID. This will make sure you don't get locked out of this web portal. Once you've signed up for the 3 programs, this is the page that you will see. We'll come back to here in just a minute to add our MDM server. Our next step in this process is to craft your Apple ID strategy. So first of all, what is an Apple ID? Well, an Apple ID is an email address plus a unique password. Since an email address is required, consider using the student's school email or their personal email address if they already have one. Now, individual Apple IDs are not required for a deployment. However, it really greatly enhances the student's use with iPads. For example, accessing iCloud or sharing documents. For students that are under 13, make sure you use the Apple ID for Students program. There are additional steps involved with that Apple ID for Students program, which we won't cover today. So please reach out to Apple for any helps with this particular step. Next, we want to consider your school's Wi-Fi and networking. Since the JSS talks to your devices over the network, you'll need to make sure that you have strong bandwidth and coverage throughout your school. Work with those who are in charge of your network to set up a Wi-Fi that will work for your school. This is also going to be a great time to consider how you would like to host the JSS, either on-premise on one of your servers or in our cloud. So, after signing up for Apple's deployment programs and creating your Apple ID and building out your Wi-Fi network, we now need to link the JSS to your DEP and VPP accounts. Let's take a look at how that process works. Here we are back on the Deployments portal page, and we're going to click on the Add MDM Server button. Next, we're going to download what's known as a server token from Apple, which we'll upload to the JSS. This is the JSS. Again, since it's a web-based portal or a web-based server, you access it all via a web browser. Here we are in our Settings tab, and we're in the Global Management section. We're going to click on the DEP button. Take note of the VPP Accounts button too, as you'll need to do the same process for your VPP account. Here, we'll upload our server token, and the link is complete. We go back to the Deployments portal page, and now the JSS shows up in our server list. Again, you'll need to repeat these same steps for your VPP account. Okay, we've now prepared everything, and we're ready to move on to configuration. This is where we're going to define how the iPads actually behave. The main way that we do this is via a small file called a configuration profile. The configuration profile is like a recipe for the settings in your iPad. You can bake in various ingredients to your profile, such as Wi-Fi, email, and VPN settings. There's a whole lot more too. You can add in certain security settings that you'd like to have and apply certain restrictions. For example, you could remove the camera on all your devices. We build these profiles inside of the JSS, and we can build different profiles for different groups. For example, you might want to create one profile for your students that has a certain set of restrictions, and then another for your faculty that probably has some fewer. So let's take a look at how we actually build these profiles. We're back in the JSS now. And notice up at the top, we are in the mobile devices section. And we've selected the configuration profiles option in our sidebar. In our main window, we have a list of different payloads, as they're called, which we can bake into our profiles. We're currently looking at the passcode payload. And from here, we can define how passcodes on our iPads work. For example, allowing simple values or choosing the minimum passcode length. Once we're satisfied with all the different payloads in our profile, we'll save it and deploy it later. When creating these profiles, you may notice that some of them require something called supervision. Supervision is a special mode for iOS, which enables deeper management and restrictions. Most schools supervise their iPads, as the additional restrictions are often needed. Additionally, supervision is required for our classroom management app called Casper Focus. We'll talk more on this app later. Supervision can be accomplished wirelessly via DEP, but we can also do it via Apple Configurator if we don't qualify for DEP. Apple Configurator is a free app from the Mac App Store and will help you supervise your iPads. This is the only way to supervise iPads if you do not qualify for DEP. DEP is only available in certain countries. So to get started, we'll plug in our iPad over USB and connect it to the Mac running Apple Configurator. We'll turn the switch of supervision to on and click the prepare button at the bottom. The iPad will reset and then be in supervision mode. If you're using this method to supervise iPads, it's recommended that you get a cart or a USB hub to connect up to 30 iPads at once to Apple Configurator. We have some more reading about this app on our website in our white paper section. If you're going to be using DEP for supervision, then we need to head back to the JSS. We now select the pre-stage enrollments option from our sidebar. In the general section, we can now see some options to supervise devices, to make the MDM profile mandatory, which is really great to have for students, and we can even skip some sections in the Setup Assistant. Note, we can even disallow the removal of the MDM profile so students can't bypass the restrictions we set. This is true even if a student decides to reset the iPad to factory settings. So once we've set up all these options in our configure step, we're ready to move on to apps and books. This section will focus on how we purchase and distribute the different content that we want our students to have on their iPads. To do this, we use Apple's Volume Purchase Program, or again, VPP. VPP has been around for a few years now, and Apple continues to improve this program. They now have two different methods to purchase apps. First, their new method, which recently came out, is called Managed Distribution. And this allows you to buy apps and then license them to your end users. So this allows you to retain the ownership of the app. That means you could buy, say, 100 copies of an education app for your fourth graders one year, and then reassign that same app next year to new students. This is a really recommended method for purchasing your apps. Their original method, which debuted with VPP, is called redeemable codes. And this is where you download a list of redemption codes and distribute them to your end users. This method will transfer the ownership of the app to your end user's Apple ID. So make note of these two methods when you decide to buy the different apps that your students need. So let's see how this process works. We're again back at our deployments portal page, and we log in with that Apple ID that we created earlier. We now see basically a web version of the App Store. And so we can search for the apps that we want to find. In this case, we're looking for the note-taking app called Evernote. We select it from our list, and then we choose the quantity that we would like to purchase. We also choose our distribution method, and we place the order. It should be noted that Apple can accept payment via major credit cards, PayPal, and even purchase orders. Make sure you reach out to Apple for help with setting up your purchase order account. Once purchased, you'll receive an email and your purchase will show up inside of the JSS. Before we start assigning apps to users, we need to first invite them to participate in our VPP program. This allows us to assign apps to specific users. So let's see what that looks like. We're now back in the JSS, and at the top, we've moved to the Users tab. From there, we select VPP Invitations from the sidebar. We also need to name this VPP invitation, so we call it something like VPP Invite for Students. We can choose from sending the invite to them in a number of different ways. We have a push notification, which prompts the users to accept. We can send them an email, or we can make it available in our self-service app. Once we choose how we want to send the invite, we need to choose who we send it to. This is known as the scope inside of the JSS. We can choose from all users or individuals. We can select from different groups, and those groups can be linked to our directory services. We can add limits and exclusions to our scope for a deeper level of granularity. Once we've configured our invites, then we can start assigning the apps. So we move to the VPP assignment section in the sidebar, and we again name our distribution. In this case, we're deploying the Evernote app that we purchased earlier. When we click on the Apps section, we can see Evernote, which we purchased from the VPP store earlier. We'll select it, and then again choose our scoping for who should have this app. A notification then will be sent to the user's iPads to download it, or we can make the app available in our self-service app. So we've talked about self-service a few times so far, so it should be a good time to now define what is self-service. Self-service is a free app that's bundled with the Casper Suite, and it's designed for end users. It's basically your own private app store. You can require directory authentication to log in, and you can send push notifications to the app for any important communications. Apps linked to VPP can be placed here, making it easy for students to get the content they need on their own time. You can also add in ebooks or PDFs or configuration profiles, which can be a handy method for users to do troubleshooting on their own. Thus, why we call it self-service. Additionally, if you choose to restrict the App Store on your iPads, then you can use self-service as a way to distribute only approved apps. This effectively creates a whitelist of the apps for you. You can populate self-service in the JSS, and you can customize what different groups of users see. Self-service can be a very powerful tool in your iPad deployment, and we encourage you to take full advantage of it. So let's recap thus far. We've signed up for our Apple deployment programs, and we've prepared our JSS and our network. We've configured the settings for our iPads by creating configuration profiles, and we've purchased the apps and books we need via VPP. Now we're ready to deploy the iPads to our students and teachers. As with any program that you do in your school, you're going to want to create a plan for your day. At JAMF, we've helped thousands of schools with this process, and here are some of the best practices that we've learned. Consider using a large area in your school, like the gym, and set up multiple stations for students to logically flow to and from. Ideally, you'll want to schedule students to come in at different times so that you're not overwhelmed with the process. For your staff and volunteers, consider putting them in matching t-shirts so your students will know where to go for help. Lastly, work with other groups in your school, such as the custodial staff, as you'll likely have a large number of empty cardboard boxes to deal with at the end of the day. With collaboration across different groups in your school and a solid plan, you will ensure a successful rollout. Let's take a look at an example that one school did. This plan was created by North Raleigh Christian Academy, who distributed over 1,000 iPads to students in grades 4 to 12 using the Casper Suite. Their story was told at our annual JAMF Nation User Conference and can be watched on demand on our website. So their students started at an orientation station or a get started station, where the faculty spoke to the students and parents about why they chose to use iPad and how the handout process would work. From there, they moved to an Apple ID station where students could create Apple IDs right on the spot or verify the password of an existing one that they want to use. Students then moved to a forms station, and North Raleigh created an acceptable use form for students and parents to sign. Once they've signed their forms and created their Apple ID, they moved to the next station to pick up their iPad and set it up. This is really where the magic happens in the process, and so we'll dive deeper into that on the next slide. After they picked up their iPads and set it up, they moved to an accessory station, picked up all the chargers and cases that they needed. And North Raleigh also set up an additional tech support spot where staff could troubleshoot any issues that students had and manually enroll iPads if needed. Finally, they moved to their last station to verify that they visited them all and they checked out. So let's take a look at that fourth station, the iPad pickup station. This is how the process of DEP plus the Casper Suite allows students to take an iPad right out of the box and get it set up with no IT involvement whatsoever. So let's take a look. The iPad boots up for the first time, and the setup assistant begins by asking for the language and region. Next, it's going to ask for which Wi-Fi network to join. And since our iPads don't know about your network yet, consider setting up a password-free temporary network for students to join. The iPad now talks to DEP and the JSS for automatic enrollment. You can optionally have students sign in with directory credentials, and configuration profiles are downloaded and applied. Next, the user is prompted to sign in with their Apple ID or create a new one right here. After the Apple ID is set up, there will be some additional setup screens that the iPad will go through. If you recall from our DEP settings slide, these are the settings that can be skipped if you so choose to. Finally, the Setup Assistant completes, and you get a little home screen rearrange tip from Apple. The user is then prompted to sign in again with their Apple ID password, and self-service will automatically start downloading. That VPP invite that we created earlier is then pushed to the user, and they're able to accept the invitation to the VPP program. If we decided to scope certain apps then to be automatically installed, those apps will be installed, or users can grab what they need from self-service. It's really magic with DEP plus the Casper Suite for handing out your iPads. Now, in case you can't do automatic enrollment via DEP, or if just something goes wrong, you can always manually enroll these. This is known as user-initiated enrollment inside of the JSS. And this can be done by navigating to your unique enrollment URL and following some basic steps. The MDM profile is downloaded as normal and enrolls the iPad. It then applies all the configuration profiles and apps that you would have done in the DEP enrollment. So, congratulations. At this point, we have successfully deployed iPads. Now we want to ensure continued success by looking at how we can manage these devices. With your iPads enrolled in the JSS, you can update settings, you can distribute new apps, you could remotely wipe a missing iPad, and much, much more. One way to manage your users and your devices is with a carrot versus a stick. Enable your end users by utilizing self-service. Populate it with helpful documents, troubleshooting tools, and apps that enrich the learning experience. Update it often to encourage usage. Try leveraging push notifications to send out communications and drive users to use self-service. Inside the JSS, you can also create custom reports to track usage, get alerted if a device falls outside of your parameters, and even manage the lifecycle and warranty of all of your iPads. This is really just scratching the surface about what you can do in the manage stage. So I'll encourage you to watch some of our additional webinars that we host on our website. Specifically, check out Enabling IT to Empower Users to go deeper on this topic. Next, set up and utilize Casper Focus, our free classroom management app that comes with Casper Suite. Casper Focus utilizes something called single app mode to wirelessly focus students' iPads to a single app or website at a time. This allows teachers to really regain precious instructional time and smooth transitions between topics. You can even use Casper Focus to conduct secure exams by ensuring that students are only in the test app and not in anything else, such as a web browser. For more details on Casper Focus, again, check out our additional webinars online. Specifically, we have one called Casper Focus, Helping Teachers Manage the Digital Classroom. It's a great place to start. Finally, connect with other users that are passionate about Apple IT on our free community forum called JAMF Nation. On JAMF Nation, you can read topics that matter to you, all related to managing Apple devices. You can learn more about the Casper Suite with our knowledge base, and you can even request features for us to implement in the future. JAMF Nation is free and does not require that you have the Casper Suite, but it will really allow you to get the most out of it. So, get started today. Visit our website, jamfsoftware.com, and download our white paper that outlines everything that we talked about today. That white paper is located in our Resources tab. While on the website, give us a call, request a free trial, or chat with us live on the website so that we can get you in touch with one of our engineers and our sales team to help you with your deployment. Thank you for your time today, and thank you, Dave. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care.